Welcome to Backbone Unlimited. My name is Matt Hartsky. September is here. I was out this morning, had family obligations, had to come back, couldn't hunt this evening, but wanted to take a moment to crank out another video for you. For most of us Western hunters, this is the month we live for. All those hours, training, scouting, shooting, packing gear, they have all been leading to this moment. The anticipation is through the roof, and I know a lot of you are itching to lace up your boots and head into your hunting area. But here's the reality. Having an area picked out, even one you've e-scouted for weeks or months, or even scouted in person during the summer, doesn't mean you're automatically ready. One of the biggest mistakes I see a lot of guys make is walking into their unit without a real plan for how they're going to approach the area itself. They think, I've got a good spot marked on the map, I'll just head in and see what happens. That's not a strategy, that's hope. And in elk hunting, hope without a plan gets you winded, burned out, and driving home early. In this episode, I want to walk you through how I approach my area once the season is underway. This isn't about randomly wandering ridges or blowing your best spots on day one. It's about using the wind, understanding transition zones, and methodically working into elk country the same way a fisherman works a stream. Close casts first, then slowly working out further until you cover all the water. When you understand how to make that first move, you're no longer relying on luck, you're hunting with intent, and intent is what kills elk. When most hunters step into their area, they do it like they're going on a hike. Pack strapped on, eyes focused on getting to a waypoint they dropped on a map, boots crunching along a trail or ridge, and I get it. We're all excited to finally be in the mountains in September. The temptation is strong to just get moving. But if you treat elk country like a trail system, you're already putting yourself at a disadvantage. The difference between a hiker and a hunter is intent. A hiker's goal is to cover ground. A hunter's goal is to cover opportunity, and that difference starts the moment you leave the truck or camp. Elk live and die by three things: their nose, their ears, and their instincts. If you want to be successful, you've got to think like a predator that's trying to beat those defenses. That means slowing down, reading the environment, and letting the wind and terrain dictate your moves instead of just your GPS pin. Now let's talk about the nose, because that's the number one defense system an elk has. Forget their eyes. Elk can catch movement, but they're not detail oriented like a whitetail. Forget their ears. Elk hear well, but they also hear so much in the mountains that they can be surprisingly forgiving of twigs snapping or rocks tumbling. What they won't forgive, not for a second, is the smell of a human. That's why your approach strategy starts with the wind. I don't care if you've scouted the best meadow, the perfect saddle, or a wallow that looks like a mud wrestling pit. You blow your scent in there the wrong way, and you've just educated every elk that might have used it for the next week. So here's the shift in mindset I want you to make. Don't think of your approach as walking to a spot. Think of your approach as setting a trap. A predator doesn't walk straight into the middle of the herd. A predator circles, watches, uses cover, and waits for the perfect moment to close the distance. Every step you take into your area should be calculated with that same intent. I've watched too many hunters walk with their heads down, focused on getting to point A. They cross open ground without paying attention to thermals. They skyline themselves because the ridge was the fastest route. They let their excitement override their instincts, and by the time they reach their waypoint, the elk are long gone. Or worse, they never knew the elk were there to begin with because they pushed them out on the way in. Thinking like a predator means slowing your pace. It means stopping to listen. It means glassing every open patch of timber you can see on your way in instead of just blowing past it. And it means constantly testing the wind. A little puff bottle here or there can go a long way and tell you more about what the mountain is doing than any weather app on your phone. Another piece of this predator mindset is understanding daily elk patterns. Elk don't move randomly. They feed at night and on into early morning, then transition into bedding areas, usually north-facing timber or shaded benches. In the evenings, they do the reverse. If you know where they're likely moving, your approach doesn't have to be guessing game. You can set up where their path intersects yours rather than barging into their living room and hoping they stick around. So before we even talk about calling, setups, or glassing, this has to sink in. Your approach is everything. Approach wrong and you'll blow your chance before the hunt even begins. Approach like a predator with the wind in your favor, your eyes scanning, your ears tuned into the mountain, and you'll set yourself up to kill elk instead of just seeing them. This is where the hunt really starts. Not at the trailhead, not at the glassing knob. It starts with how you think the moment you step off the road. If there's one time of day when hunters burn more opportunities than any other, I feel like it's the morning. The excitement of a fresh day, the anticipation of bugles, the adrenaline that's been building for 11 months, it all boils over. And a lot of guys charge right in without thinking about the one factor that dictates everything. Thermals. Here's the thing you've got to understand. Thermals aren't a side note in elk hunting. They're the law of the mountain. In the morning before the sun has a chance to warm the slopes, cool air sinks. That means everything in the drainage from the ridge top to the valley floor is sending scent downhill. If you try to set up high or walk in high and drop down into elk, you're busted before you take your second step. I have another video I'm going to link to here for you that is 100% about elk hunting and how to do that in relation to wind and thermals. So we'll just touch on it lightly here. In the mornings, I almost always start low. Instead of marching the ridge tops, I'll move into the bottoms and work my way carefully along the base of the transition zones. That way my scent is pulling down and away from the elk that are feeding their way uphill toward bedding. It's not glamorous and it doesn't give you sweeping views like being up on top, but it keeps you in the game. Let's talk about where I like to set up once I'm in that zone. Elk are creatures of habit. In the morning, they feed out into open meadows, burns, or grassy benches a lot of times, but they don't stay there. As daylight builds, they naturally start drifting towards security, shaded slopes, timber, and especially those north-facing ridges where it stays cool longer. The path between those two places, the feeding and the bedding, is what I call a transition zone. Think of these areas as funnels. Elk don't like to climb straight up the steepest slope unless they have to. They'll cut along benches, slip through saddles, and work little finger ridges that naturally lead them toward cover. These transitions are predictable, and if you can be waiting at the right pinch point when they move, you've just stacked the odds in your favor. Here's how I like to play it. I'll ease into the edge of a transition zone before daylight or right at daylight, settle in where I can see and hear movement, make sure I've got great shooting lanes, and then use restraint. Instead of blasting bugles, I'll throw out a soft cow call now and then, and just enough to sound like a cow that lingered behind. That subtlety does two things. First, it doesn't blow my cover, and second, it taps into a bull's natural curiosity. If a bull is moving through that timber, a simple mew or two can make him circle around and check out at least, what's going on and swing down to investigate. Too many hunters overcall in the mornings. They're so eager to hear a response that they announce themselves with bugles before they ever get a chance to feel things out. What that usually does is push the herd faster to bedding or cause pressured bulls to clam up entirely. Subtlety is a weapon, and in the morning, especially early September, when elk are on the move and your scent is fragile, it's your best tool. Another key part of this morning approach is patience. Remember, elk move with the mountain's rhythm. They're not sprinting, they're drifting. If you set up at the end of a transition funnel, you might have to wait hours before elk filter through, if at all. Don't get antsy and push too soon. The hunter who sits tight on the edge often kills the bull that the impatient guy bumps. Let me paint a picture. A few Septembers ago, I slept into the bottom of a transition zone at first light. I knew there were elk in the meadows nearby. Instead of forcing my way closer to the vast meadows, I dropped into the edge of the timber at the base of a south-facing slope. About 7:30, I gave 2 soft cow calls. Nothing else. Nothing answered, but 20 minutes later, I caught movement, a young 6-point drifting down through the transition, nose in the wind, trying to find that cow. I never made another sound. He walked right into bow range, and I had him dead to rights. That hunt wasn't luck. It was thermals, patience, and playing the transition zone. That's the morning strategy I trust during this early season, especially when there's no talking going on. So when September mornings break, don't run high. Start low. Hunt the edges of transition zones. Use subtle calls and let the elk's natural movement bring them to you. That's how you turn the first light of the day into your first real opportunity. One of the best ways I've ever found to explain how to enter an elk area is with fishing. I grew up fishing, and if you've spent any time on a stream or lake, you know this rule. You don't cast straight to the far bank first. Why? Because you'll spook every fish between you. That's called lining the fish, and with that far cast. You've skipped the best water possibly that could be right in front of you, and you've risked blowing out your entire opportunity. Good anglers know how to start with short cast, working the water closest to you, and then gradually extending further and further until you've covered it all. That way you maximize your chances without wasting anything. Elk hunting works the exact same way. Too many hunters blow straight into the heart of their area first thing in the morning. They've marked a wallow or a bench on an onX, and that's all they can think about. They march directly towards it, crashing through transition zones, crossing meadows, and sending their scent into every pocket of timber on the way in. By the time they get to their spot, they've already announced their presence to every elk within earshot or scent cone. Here's a better way. Cast close. When I step into my area, I treat the outer edges like the first piece of water in front of me. I'll slow down, work those edges carefully, subtle cow calls, sit, listen, watch. I see if there's action there before I ever push deeper. Sometimes elk are hanging right on the fringe of a meadow, a bench, or a transition zone. If you blow past that, you've missed your easiest opportunity of the day. We have had this happen so many times. We get all set up, hang out, listen for a few minutes, one call, all of a sudden a bull steps out within 30 seconds. If we had gone crazy there, we would have spooked that bull out of there, right? Instead, we were packing meat right after first light. Once I've worked the edges and nothing's happening, I'll extend my cast. That means pushing a little deeper, or maybe a little more aggressive calling, checking the next bench, moving into the next funnel area, or easing into a saddle that connects feeding to bedding. I'm not charging in, I'm working in. Each layer of ground gets covered with intent, just like an angler methodically working the water. The beauty of this approach is that it buys you multiple chances. If there's an elk close to the edge, you might get him early without ever disrupting the rest of the drainage. If there's nothing there, no harm done. You still have the deeper country to hunt. But if you march to the far side on your first move, you've bumped through and burned through every layer of opportunity on the way in through that area. Another reason this analogy matters is because it forces you to respect how fragile elk country can be. These animals don't tolerate much pressure, especially on public land. If you blow the herd out of the drainage on opening morning because you charged in, you might have just ruined that spot for the next several days or the rest of the season. But if you hunt your way in, testing each cast as you go, you can preserve opportunity and keep the basin alive for multiple days of hunting. So the next time you're fired up to dive into your spot, picture yourself on a stream with a fly rod in your hand. Don't bomb the far bank. Cast short. Work the close water. Then, if nothing's happening, extend your reach a little further. Elk hunting rewards the same kind of discipline and patience. You know, everything we've talked about up to this point, thinking like a predator, starting low with the thermals, and working your area like a fisherman casting close before going deeper, pays off in a very real way. And the payoff isn't just seeing elk, it's stacking the odds in your favor to kill elk. Most hunters will spend their entire September wondering where the elk went. They'll say things like they vanished overnight or the pressure must have pushed them out. Sometimes that's true, but just as often the elk didn't disappear at all. They just learned to avoid the exact places those hunters blundered into. When you approach differently with patience and intent, you're giving yourself multiple controlled opportunities instead of burning the whole mountain on one push. The first payoff is simple. You stay undetected. By starting low in the morning, you're keeping the thermals working for you instead of against you. You're not dumping scent down into the very bedding areas you're trying to hunt. That means elk are still relaxed, still moving naturally, and still killable. The second payoff is opportunity layering. Every cast you make as you work into your area is a chance at an encounter. On the fringe edges, you might pull in a satellite bull or catch cows transitioning through. A little deeper in, you might bump into the herd before they settle into bedding. And further in still, you might find a staging area or funnel where bulls checking for cows. Each step gives you a legitimate chance without sacrificing the rest of your setup. The third payoff, and maybe the most important, is preservation of your area. Elk don't tolerate pressure well. If you run straight into the heart of your spot and get winded or blow a herd out, that basin might go cold for days. But if you hunt deliberately, working in layer by layer, you can stretch on drainage or one ridge system into multiple days of productive hunting. That's huge, especially if you're on a week-long or 10-day hunt where you need that consistency. That's the payoff. Consistent, renewable opportunity. Now let's talk about the mental side of this payoff. Hunting elk is as much a grind between the ears as it is a physical challenge. When you know you're following a smart, step-by-step strategy, you stay more patient. You're not second-guessing yourself every hour. You're not panicking that the elk are gone. You trust the process, and that confidence keeps you in the game longer, and staying in the game longer is what kills bulls. I didn't kill a bull this morning, right? I used this same transition method that I've described to you. It's worked many times. It didn't work today, but it's the plan, and I know if I stick to it long enough during the times when these elk are silent and I don't have bugles to play with, that it can still work. So what's the payoff of all this discipline? It's not just punching a tag, though that's the goal we're all after. It's knowing that you didn't waste your area. You didn't burn your hunt on day one, and you gave yourself the maximum number of chances to succeed. That's what separates the guys who fill their tags from the guys who go home with excuses. Elk hunting isn't about luck. You know this. It's about approach. And when you approach your area with patience, predator-like intent, and a layered strategy, you'll see firsthand how those little choices in September add up to big payoffs by the end of the hunt. Every elk hunt starts before you ever see or hear an animal. It starts with how you step off the road, how you shoulder your pack, and the mindset you carry into that first ridge or drainage. September has a way of chewing hunters up. The mountains are big, the days are long, and the elk don't always play along with the plan you built all summer. If you head in with the mindset of a hiker just covering ground, hoping to stumble into elk, you'll get frustrated fast. You'll start second-guessing yourself, and frustration turns into mistakes. The mindset I want you to carry is this. Every step counts. From the truck to the transition zone, from the meadow to the edge of the saddle, you are hunting, not walking. Hunting. Every step is a chance to catch sign. Every pause is a chance to hear some type of elk sound. Every puff of wind is a signal about what the mountain is doing. When you treat the approach with the seriousness of the hunt itself, you'll be amazed at how many more opportunities appear in front of you. Another piece of this mindset is patient. Elk are masters of rhythm. They move when the mountain tells them to move. If you're in too much of a hurry, you'll outrun their rhythm and never even know it. Trust the process. Slow down. Believe that if you hunt smart, your chances will come. And finally, remember resilience. You might bump into elk. The wind might betray you. Another hunter might cut you off. None of that means the hunt is over. A predator doesn't quit when the first stalk fails. He's hungry. He regroups, repositions, finds more elk, and keeps hunting. That's the mindset you need to bring to your approach. One of the relentless patience and constant adaptation predator mindset. If you can lock that in before you ever see your first elk, you'll already be ahead of 90% of the hunters in the mountains this September. September is here, and the approach you take into your area can make or break your entire hunt. Think like a predator, not a hiker. Start slow in the mornings with the thermals. Work the edges first, casting close before pushing deeper, just like a fisherman works a stream. Avoid the common mistakes that blow hunts before they start. And when things don't go according to plan, adapt. Trust the process. Stay patient and let the mountain's rhythm work for you. At the end of the day, elk hunting isn't about luck, it's about intent. Every decision you make on the approach, where you step, how you play the wind, how patient you are, stacks the odds one way or the other. When you approach with discipline, you give yourself multiple opportunities instead of one rushed gamble. That's the difference between going home with a story of the one that got away and going home with meat on your back. If this episode hit home for you, I would love to invite you to take that next step and join us at Team Backbone. This is more than just a membership. It's a mindset and a movement. Inside, you're going to get exclusive digital content on mindset, backcountry strategy, gear planning, and fitness programming. You'll get access to our private Team Backbone Facebook group where you can connect directly with me and other relentless hunters. You'll get automatic entry into our monthly gear giveaways, and team members receive an exclusive Backbone Unlimited t-shirt mailed every month, designs you won't find anywhere else. This is your chance to step into the inner circle, to sharpen your edge, build your tribe, and surround yourself with hunters who refuse to quit. You can learn more and join today at backboneunlimited.com under the membership tab. Thanks for being here. Best of luck on your September hunt. Until next time, train harder, hunt smarter, and never settle.